right.
Yo,
What
yo,
is
yo.
up?
Welcome to the podcast.
It's just a view with two guys on sofa.
Two guys on a sofa.
Hey, you want one too? All right.
All right, all right.
We haven't come up with a name yet.
No. Should we turn the light on, you think?
I think the color's fine.
Yeah, the sun's going to go down. It's going to get dark, though.
Yeah, we can turn on that one tomorrow. On beyond. I wonder how bad the file size is. Yeah, looks good. Conversations in a dark room.
It was a dark and dirty room.
So are we just gonna stare at ourselves talking? I mean, like...
Well, we're going to pull a video, so... You know. I mean, I guess you want to look at the camera, I guess. You know, play to the audience.
Yeah. I mean, I can see you. I guess I can make eye contact with you through the camera.
Hey, Big T.
That's just weird. Just like arguing with you as if you were through this
come
box.
on, man. Are you fucking stupid? What's wrong with you?
How crazy is this that, like, in this age, instead of talking directly to you, I'm talking to a box which has your image.
Yeah.
Like, you're right next to me. I could literally just turn and talk to you.
Yeah.
But we're choosing to talk through this recording device to each other.
Yeah, I mean, you probably want, like, a third person to, like, manage the stuff so you're not, like, constantly, like, looking over, or you want, like, a second monitor or something. But, yeah, I know what you mean. Like, Da Vinci would, like, shit himself. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. Just I don't think he could imagine it. It just, why are they doing this?
Like, if you went to, like, Papua New Guinea and just, like, grabbed one of those dudes.
Yeah.
And just brought him. you Shanghaied him. You, like, threw him in a sack and, like, brought him and just, like, let him loose in New York City.
You know, they used to do that in Astoria. They used to Shanghai people.
Well, yeah.
There's a play about it.
It wasn't to do...
You know why?
It was for slave labor and for, like, sex trafficking and stuff.
Not slave labor, but like forced work. They paid you, but you didn't want to be there. They would knock you out and put you on a boat because no one wanted to be a sailor.
Oh, yeah, once you're on the boat, there's no, like...
Yeah, exactly. You're going to take the pay that they give you because you don't have a choice. Yeah, it's Shanghai in Astoria, I think is the name of the play. They do it every year.
Yeah, there's like a bunch of underground tunnels and stuff in Portland where people were like shanghaied and stuff. They're like grabbed and taken in underground.
Yeah, I heard about that. You can go on tours and stuff. But
yeah.
I hear they're pretty lame typically.
I've never been on them.
No, neither have I. I mean, this is all out in the public or whatever. So, you know how we used to have conversations about how I should play RTS games because they take more skill than FPS games?
Yep.
I was thinking it's like the same argument between like someone who draws and someone who paints. That the skill in itself there is the same. Like it's still hard to be good at it. And to the same degree that it is in StarCraft. I feel like the creativity and skill both come out in both games. For example, in StarCraft, I've noticed like a popular tactic they used to run on me was you would divert me with like a force. You would attack me with an army, but at the same time you would run marauders around that force and assault my base and harass my workers. That was a diversionary tactic. You would distract me through your army and then cripple my economy in the background. I think I do something similar in FPS games. I think that there was a situation where I was playing one-on-one with someone. We weren't playing one-on-one, but it was just us two left in a match. And I was pinned down behind a crate. He knew where I was. He had a lock on me. I couldn't pop out. He would have popped my head. And I knew the area where he was, but I didn't know exactly where he was. And he would have had the jump regardless and gotten me first. There was a higher probability of that anyway. Well, I happened to have a flashbang and a smoke grenade. So I threw a smoke and then followed by a flash, knowing that he would see the smoke grenade, get flashed for half a second because of the distance, and he would assume that I was going to take the time that he was flashed to run through the smoke to take a different cover so he wouldn't know where it was, right? Well, in the second that I threw the smoke and the flash, instead of popping out the right side of the crate where I threw them, I popped out the left, got a beat on him, and shot him in the head while he was aiming at the smoke grenade. You see, it was the same type of tactic. It was a diversionary tactic. The creative thought there was the same, to distract your enemy and then hit him from behind, essentially. But without the skill in the game itself, it doesn't matter if you have these thoughts, you can't carry them out. It still takes the skill of the game to execute.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I mean by like RTSs take more skill is that it's harder to master the base mechanics of the game that is needed to play. Like the mechanics used that you need to like master in Counter-Strike are not nearly as difficult to master as they are in StarCraft. In StarCraft, like until you get to like even at like the pro level, like until you get to like elite level of pros, like tactics and strategy really don't matter that much. Where like in Counter-Strike, yeah, there may be guys that are, you know, a bit better at, you know, getting headshots and, you know, they're better shots, but you can still play a tactical game with that. Where if you're just not as good mechanically in StarCraft, it doesn't matter what you do tactically. You're just gonna lose because you just can't play the game. Like it's almost like there's like you have to get to a certain skill level before you can even play the game. And it's true within like FPSs, but in FPSs to get to that is much lower.
So by play the game, you'd have to elaborate because you could play it. Period.
What I mean is like, there's very little strategy or like tactics that are needed to win in StarCraft until you get to like an elite level. All you need to be able to do is like if you can manage your base properly, you're managing your resources, you're building SCVs every time, you're building your units every time, you're building your buildings at the precise moment, you're utilizing your resources efficiently, you're expanding at the right times. It doesn't even really matter how you control your army. Like you can just A-click and you'll win because if you're better than your opponent at controlling the basics of the game, like the fundamentals. It's like in baseball, like in basketball. If you can't like dribble or like shoot at all, or like pass or even guard, like it doesn't matter if you have an excellent knowledge of the triangle offense. Like you're just not able to play the game. Does that make sense? So like being able to play the game. No, but your point
before was that you can manage your base well and you do okay until you got to a certain level. That's not true in basketball. You can't not be able to perform any of those things you listed and still play the game and be decent at it.
What do you mean?
So you were saying if you were able to, you had good base management, but you weren't good tactically at controlling your units, but you were good with your resources and continuing production. You were making you were comparing that to be like playing basketball and not being able to pass or shoot, but knowing the triangle offense. I think you would get further in StarCraft than you would in basketball in those two comparisons.
No, you wouldn't. Like if you can't. Like, if you're just, like, playing, like, you watch a ton of games and stuff, and you're like, oh, man, you want to go, whatever strategy you want to pull out of there, like, oh, I'm going to go, Medic, Marine, Marauder, Medevac. Oh, it's really good until, like, the 15-minute mark when Protoss gets, whatever X unit. Then you got to switch, and oh, these are the tactics I have to do. This is how to do it. But if you can't build SCVs every time, you can't build your units every time, you can't, make sure you're not getting supply blocked. If you can't do those things, it doesn't matter that you know it. Just like in basketball, if you're like an expert at the triangle offense, like you've read all the theory, you can like watch games and analyze film, like see how but you can't dribble, like you just can't play the game.
Well, that was the same thing. That's the comparison I was making. Is there's like the thoughts in playing a game and having good ideas, like strategies, skills, creative thought, versus the skill to execute what you were thinking. You can analyze a game and understand how to do it correctly, but if you don't have the skill to pull it off, then it's not going to happen. It doesn't even matter. I think the same is true about an FPS game. Like, for example, Seth Ward. He understands how the game works. He's seen us play. He knows how he should play, but he doesn't have the skill to pull it off. And that shows there, too. I think the learning curve really is irrelevant. Sure, that there's a bunch of stuff, and that takes a long time to master in StarCraft. But to fine-tune your aim to the point where you get shot in the back and you turn around and hit someone in the face, I think it takes about the same amount of time.
No, I'm going to disagree, but I agree with what you're saying. Yeah, you can't – it's not like being a professional FPS player is easier than being a professional StarCraft player. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is like the ability to like master the mechanics necessary to play on the strategic or tactical level is much, much higher in RTSs, especially with like StarCraft. Like you see at the elite pro level, players just lose because they can't keep up with their macro. They can't keep up, with somebody who's just a beast and is able to just outproduce them, more efficient, across the board. And the other guy's doing like, really cool micro stuff, or like really, intricate, tactical maneuvers, or like they do some sort of surprise, build or something. They still don't have those mechanics as good as another player, and they're just going to lose. And it's true. Sure, that's true in FPSs, but I don't think it's to as large a degree.
See, I think it's a mistake to compare them. Just like I used to make this argument with painting versus drawing. I used to think that painting was much harder because to get the same quality of a picture, it's much harder to get your brush to behave in the way that a pencil does. It's not as steady, it's not as consistent. So it's harder to get a realistic looking image painting than to do drawing. But now I realize that the medium is like kind of confined within itself. The skill to paint a decent picture and the skill to paint or to draw a decent picture are about the same. They're going to look different, but that's just because the medium is different. I think the same is true about an FPS. It's not all about shooting. It's also about situational awareness. When you see people, your enemies, take action on the screen, you notice where they are on the map. To be able to predict where they're going to be at what time and to put yourself in a good position to take advantage of it and to always be moving and to always have the jump on someone, those are things that I think are overlooked in this. It's not about, like for example, earlier when I was talking about that example of distracting this guy, I knew that I shoot really well, but he had the jump on me. It was a disadvantage. I could have taken it and I might have gotten it, but I was putting myself in a higher probability shot. I was turning his head, therefore having more time to capitalize on shooting him.
Yeah, but that has nothing to do with the like development and understanding of like the mechanics needed to play the game. That's what I mean. It's like you're already at that tactical, strategical level. Like I guess.
But I am a high-level Counter-Strike player, so.
Yeah, sure. It's not. You're comparing apples and oranges to be sure. Yeah. So I mean, but it's a lot like I don't know, like if you're like a decathlete, like
Mm-hmm.
the decathlon, you got to practice a whole bunch of stuff versus like you're doing just the shot put. Like it's still like it's not any easier to become a professional at the decathlon versus
No,
the
but
shot
that
put.
comparison
But there's
already
more
is
stuff
wrong.
to learn and to be more proficient at like the basic fundamentals level.
No, but being a decathlon, like decathlete, I guess, is what you would call it? Sure. Comparing those, the more apt example would be to compare the two events rather than to compare one event and then a decathlon. If you want to do that and then compare it to what we were talking to, you'd have to do it versus a gauntlet of games. So playing StarCraft versus playing 5 LAN games. That would be more
No, what I
accurate
mean is like in
comparison.
Counter-Strike, like you're really only like the only thing you're really practicing as far as mechanics-wise is your ability to shoot accurately, control your spray, be able to turn around and shoot. Basically, the only thing you're practicing is being able to hit people in the head as fast as you can.
No, there's also the evasion,
there's
too.
different guns, yes, that is all true. But in StarCraft, there's much, much more specific things you have to master. There's a much broad area. That's not, again, like, that's not to say that playing an RTS is harder to become a pro than it is to be an FPS. They're probably equally hard. I'm just saying mastering the mechanics is harder in RTSs than it is in an FPS. That's basically all I'm saying. But that just changes the game. Like, it changes the nature of how, like, the top level plays. Like, maybe there are those freak dudes who are just, like, so much better at, like, being able to get headshots and just so much quicker, so able to control hallways so much better.
As I said, getting the headshots isn't. Once you get to that level, everyone's a great shot. It's not about.
That's what I mean.
It's about giving yourself higher percentage shots. It's about putting yourself in a situation where you're not in the crosshairs.
Like I feel like maybe like 20%. I'm just throwing this out there. 20% of the game is being able to master the mechanics, and 80% is strategy and tactics. For
Counter-Strike?
Counter-Strike. And it's probably reversed for StarCraft. 80% of being like a top-level player is being able to master the mechanics, and 20% is tactics and strategy.
Okay, so you're saying with mechanics, you can go further in StarCraft with purely a mechanical base with no strategy than you could in Counter-Strike and vice versa. So,
Well, I mean, you wouldn't... Obviously not in all absolutes. Like, if you just... Like,
Yeah.
your mechanics were amazing, but you built nothing but SCVs, you're not going to win.
yeah.
I mean, but, yeah, like, you don't
Well,
need
that's
to
part
be...
of mechanics is being able to produce units.
Right,
at the
but if
same
you
time
pick like a
controlling them.
strategy that is just impossible to win. But I mean, I've seen games where Bomber, Korean Terran player, literally builds nothing but Marines. Like,
Yeah.
that's not usually a
Yeah,
strategy
viable.
you would do.
Mhm.
But his macro was just so good, it didn't matter. Like, he was just able to just, crush. Well, he didn't crush him. It was a long, fought-out game. I think that's a good way to describe the two games. I don't think anyone is harder to, reach a top level. They're just the way you practice and what you're practicing and how you're practicing is different. Like, when I was playing Counter-Strike a lot, like, yeah, I would practice a lot of, counter-strafing and, being accurate and, practicing different aim maps and stuff. But a lot what I was doing was, like, especially was, like, working out how to read what was happening around me while I was playing.
Yeah, it's more situational
Yeah.
awareness.
Where, like, in StarCraft, you're not really doing that. Yeah, you are.
You are. You have to.
But it's
Scouting.
not to the same,
That's what that
like,
is.
level.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think definitely your position and what's around you matters more in Counter-Strike immediately. Obviously, that stuff's important in StarCraft, but it's not going to lose the game for you.
Yeah, like, if I have, like, a scout and I see, like, a dropship coming, I'm like, oh, fuck, there's a dropship. Oh, I got to build SCVs. Is what
but
I'm
you
thinking.
have you have more time. If you
I
turn
gotta
around,
build
there's a guy looking at you with his gun.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you're not aware of your surroundings, you're going to get shot. And
Yeah.
That's the end. You don't have an army to fall back on. I mean, like, yeah, we're comparing two different games. I guess I would agree with you that mechanically it is harder to get what I would call a decent grasp of the game, to be able to play it effectively, to not get cheesed. I would think it's harder than in Counter-Strike. Like
What do you mean not get cheesed?
the perfect example is playing something like Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter. If someone is able to beat you by mashing the fireball move, then you're getting cheesed. You're
Yeah.
not good enough to play the game if you can't get past a button mashing cheap move.
Right. I mean, I guess the general rule of thumb is, like, some of the hardest skill curve games are, like, Street Fighter and StarCraft.
Yeah,
Are,
which is
like,
weird.
the
those
two hardest
even though
skill
that-
curves of
I
games.
guess that is a mechanical repetition that you would have to practice
Right.
over.
Like,
and over
yeah, because,
again.
like, I don't know if you've
But I think there's less strategic
you've read
thinking in Street Fighter. You're not thinking
yes,
how the
that's
battlefield develops.
Well, you are,
You
but
know?
I agree with you.
No,
It's
that's
more
tactical.
about
It's not strategic.
there's very little strategy. Yeah, in that sense,
it's
you're right.
more
Yeah, there's
tactical.
very little strategy. It's pretty much all tactics, but there is some
But
strategy.
more of it, it's. I mean, you can think down the line,
But I
like
think most
10
of it
moves down the
is-
line, try to prepare for stuff. But I don't
That
think
would still be
typically it
tactics.
happens like that. I think it's more interpretive.
That would still be tactics. Strategy.
No,
would be like,
that's what I'm arguing. But even then, I don't think it's as tactical as we're talking about. You're not really calculating as far ahead as you would in like chess. What you're doing,
it's a different type. It's not about perceiving moves down the line. It's about being able
it's
to
interpreting
read.
the moves as they
Yeah,
come at you.
that's
and
all
to
tactical.
flip them.
That's all tactical.
Okay, yeah.
But I think like Street Fighter and those types of games are more like StarCraft, where it's like your ability to like control your dude is difficult, and it's not really about like your meta analysis of the game. Because there's like, I don't know if you've read that book by that professional gamer. I can't remember the dude's name, called Playing to Win, where he basically
You told me about this.
he
I haven't
like
read it.
does like a reimagining sort of thing of like Sun Tzu's like Art of War, but
Yeah.
like does it through like video games.
Yeah.
And he was
Yeah, you told
known.
me about that. That's where I got the example for the Street Fighter.
He was like a top level American player, and he was like known for doing like
Really cheap moves?
the same move over and over again.
Yeah, that's
And
that's
like
where the concept
some
comes
people
from.
just couldn't do anything about that, and they lost. That's because like it's so hard to be able to like master the mechanics in the game to like adapt to something like that. Like there's nothing that could ever happen like that in Counter-Strike, really, where somebody just does the same thing. There's like nothing you can do.
Yeah, no, that's totally possible.
I mean, I guess
I
if
used
they
to do
get
it
the
all the
op
time.
or something.
No, if you have a really good counter strafe, then you know when someone's going to shoot. I've been to that
Against
point.
elite level players, like top level players.
That,
I'm not talking
yeah,
pubbing.
even then, like if someone's got shooting down, but they don't have counter strafing down,
Right.
then it doesn't matter. You're going to dodge their shots every time, and the second you do it the first time, you're going to drill them in the face because they're
Right.
standing still trying to shoot you.
Yeah.
So I mean that in itself is mechanical. Switching weapons at the right time, but I agree there is definitely more actions per minute. And I think, like you said, StarCraft is definitely skewed upon keeping productivity up the whole time, whereas in Counter-Strike, it's more of a positional awareness and taking advantage of angles.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
The mechanics of it are the counter-strafing, being able to obviously control your character well, have a good sense of presence and be able to move around, crouch at the right times, counter-strafe, and switch weapons.
Yeah, being proficient with all the weapons that are effective.
As well as movement, but
Yeah.
yeah. And then, beyond that, I think map knowledge and like positional awareness are more.
This is why
important
I
in
really
that,
don't
in StarCraft.
like League of Legends, because I think
I really like that.
I don't like
it's
League
a
of
really
Legends
good,
because I think
it
League of
feels
Legends-
like basketball. It's a team game. It's
yes,
positional.
yeah,
With actual positions
I think
too.
But for League of Legends, at least from my experience, I feel like there's very little skill or mechanics to master.
Oh,
And
that is untrue.
No, I'm not saying there's none. I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's
More in
very
Counter-Strike.
little. I would disagree with that. I think most of the game, because there's so many different heroes and different items and different combinations, different ways you can play the same heroes, it's almost a huge percentage of being good at that game is just having knowledge of the game. It's
right.
not actual like skill. It's just being able to have played longer and know all the characters, all their moves, how they play, the different types of builds they can get. They have literally nothing to do with how you're able to control and master the mechanics of the game. That's my experience with League of Legends.
I have. This is a perfect time to test our video feature. I'm gonna pull one up. That runs counter to what you're saying. There's, I believe it's number 3 on this one is really good at it, especially the last
Hey, everyone.
one. Just give me a second here. Top 5 plays.
Team fight at a much lower level of play. At the start, we see Twitch in trouble as Hecarim comes rushing in, but he flashes his front
Oh, this
line,
is
set up
different one. I
a
know which
perfect
one
team.
it is. It's number 5.
Hey, everyone.
Here we go.
What's up, ladies?
I think
Final
this is
play, we
the
have an
one.
explosive team fight formulated from a Baron dance. At the start, we see the enemy Amumu engage on Jarvan as the tanks duel it out, and we see every...
No, that's not it either. Which way to
Hey, everyone, and welcome to week 225 of our League of Legends.
They just edited it out.
Yeah. This is the stream, or the channel for sure. I guess it's got to be 2.
Hey, everyone, and welcome to week 220.
No, that can't be it. That looks about right, though.
And eventually what you see in this play with a 16 creep wave, including 2 cannon minions, hitting the tower and threatening to take it down. All of this combined with constant pressure of an engage from Zac and the threat of a sneaky Baron puts Purple Team in panic, and they know they have to either back off now or look for a hard engage. With the tower already at half health, Purple Team gets desperate and they move in too close as Zac sees his opening and readies Elastic Slingshot. Orianna immediately puts the ball on him as he leaps into the air, and we freeze it so you can see what's going on.
Yeah, this is a different one. God, I know it's...
Hey everyone, and welcome to week 225.
Yeah, this looks it.
matchup, and with the golden
Alright,
tower
so this
so
is
even,
my
both teams
example
are looking
for
for the
how
opportunity
teamwork
to
is
start
important
this
here.
snowball. As blue team returns damage to Nasus, the enemy Jace moves in and lines up a brilliant shockwave from downtown, sniping Fiddlesticks as his team
So it's
immediately turns to do
5-4,
Baron
Reds
with a
up
5v4
5. They're gonna
advantage.
take
At
Baron
this
right
crucial
now.
point in the
Blue
game,
team's
Baron
at
means
4, they're at a
everything.
severe
With the buff,
disadvantage.
either team can
They're
start to
gonna
group
have
the
the
6
Baron
towers,
buff,
and with
and
no
they're
wards
gonna
or
be
anyone near the Baron pit,
5
blue
up
team
with
has
the
to
Baron
give it
buff
up to the
versus a
enemy
team of
team.
4.
As they finish Baron off, we're going to see them group and head to mid lane to begin the push, but a ward spots them moving together as Orianna sees an opening to send her ball in, and we
ward.
freeze it.
She ults in.
Out of nowhere, the ball comes through and lands in the middle of the enemy team as Orianna starts a devastating command shockwave on 4. While this was happening, the friendly Lissandra sent in Glacial Path over the wall so she can follow up with her W and ultimate for more massive AoE damage. In the distance, we see Jarvan and Vayne moving in quickly as Jarvan looks to EQ over the wall into his ultimate and Vayne to clean up whatever is left as we head back into the play to watch the magic happen. The ball goes in into Shockwave and Dissonance while Lissandra appears to Ring of Frost into Frozen Tomb, dealing huge damage to everyone as Jarvan comes in, followed by Vayne from the side. Despite the fresh Baron buff, blue team utilized how well their team comp excels in hard engaging to make this play happen. Whether it be Orianna, Jarvan, or
Bam, just a perfectly executed ambush right into that with all of the cards against them in that sort of engagement.
I mean, obviously it's different at an elite level when you're at,
So you're saying that plays like that just only happen at the elite level?
I'm not saying
they
that.
don't
I'm
happen.
saying like when I'm playing, I feel like there's such a huge like knowledge curve that I just am not interested in like learning. How many
That's true
fucking
for StarCraft.
No, there's not. How many fucking champions are there?
Yeah, but I mean,
It's
with
ridiculous.
champions,
And how many different ways
it's the
can
same
the
with
champions-
units.
No, it's not.
Yes, the knowledge required to know the units is the same sort of knowledge you
No,
have
it's
to know
not.
to understand the hero.
No, because there's so many heroes.
How is it
that-
different?
And there's so many different ways to play each hero, and that's what there's so many different combinations of heroes, and that's like really what it is. And there's like a whole meta-analysis going on the whole time. I feel like so much part of the game is like the knowledge that is going on, the themes of like what is in trend.
That doesn't matter though. The reason trends get set is because people break the current meta. That's what.
Yeah,
That's how
yeah,
that
I know,
happens.
I know.
It's people get locked
Yeah,
in
because
these
people
trenches,
have-
but
no,
those aren't the
because
people who are excelling. Those are followers.
The people,
who set
people
the
who
metas
block the
are
metas,
the leaders.
the people who block the metas have come up with some bit of knowledge that is outdoing the other team's knowledge. It's not It's not skill.
It is skill.
No, it's not.
It's skill with the
It's like
character that has
research.
been looked over. No, it's not just research.
Yes, it is. That's what it is. It's like It's like in chess. There's,
So you're saying revelations like these have never happened in StarCraft? That people were using unit combinations before and then changed to a new one? That
no,
doesn't
it does.
happen?
Yes, it does happen.
It happens frequently.
It is a factor.
Those are metas.
It is. It is
And
a factor.
It works the same way.
It is a
It's the
factor,
same
but
sort
in
of thing.
in League of Legends, it's a huge factor.
I think you just have a bias against League of Legends for some
No,
reason.
I'm talking.
It is the best team-based
best.
video game. It is.
You think it's better than Counter-Strike as a team-based video game? No, because Counter-Strike
Yeah, I
is
do,
everybody's skill is measurable.
Yeah,
it's
but it's
not the
not-
same thing.
the
There's not
team
some
doesn't matter as
special.
much.
There's not some
It's not as
special
important.
ingredient that you can get in Counter-Strike that just renders the other team not as viable, and then the meta is broken. There's no meta going on in Counter-Strike. It's just how good are you? How coordinated are you with your team? What are you able to do? How tricky, how strategic, how tactical, how are you able to read the situations? The best team always wins. It's like the perfect example is like in Formula 1. In Formula 1, the best driver does not win. The best car and team wins. It's all about knowledge. It's all about research. It's all about development. It's skill is
Yeah, I mean,
involved.
that's the same for soccer. And
No.
you're a huge fan of that. Yes.
No,
yes,
soccer,
the best team does
there's
not always win.
because there's not like you can go to the laboratory and create a better player. That's
No,
not
but
what
you
it's
can create
like.
better plays.
No, you can't because like that is true. Like how like the strategy and the tactics are involved. That adapts, but it's not like you're learning some piece of knowledge and adapting some new thing that hasn't existed before.
Well, that's
Like in
that's
Formula
the point of
1,
a new strategy, is
Like
that
the
it
best
hasn't
car
existed.
team wins. Same thing with League of Legends. It's not like the
Well,
most
they're all
skilled.
variables.
It's not the most skilled. In Counter-Strike, the
I
most
mean,
skilled
being-
team wins. Not in League of Legends.
Yeah, not in StarCraft either. Sometimes the most skilled player loses to a person who is less gifted, who came up with the strategy that happens to feed his own.
I mean, in a best of 7, like that usually doesn't happen, but sure it can. That's especially from my experience as just playing as like somebody who's I'm not an elite level League of Legends player. Like,
Yeah.
it just seems ridiculous to me.
Yeah, I don't find it so ridiculous. I mean, it's the same thing that you have in fighting games. It's the same comparison. Like you were talking about Street Fighter being one of the highest competitive
What does Street
games.
Fighter have? I don't even know. It doesn't have.
We're talking about character choice
How many characters does Street
and
Fighter have? And there's no
learning
variations
knowledge.
on
There's
it.
like 30, and there are different ways to use their movesets. They have a set number of moves, but that's the
Yeah.
same about Heroes and LoL as well.
No, LoL is much worse than
I would say Street Fighter, they have more moves
Street
than
Fighter.
they do
Yes,
in
that
LoL.
is a factor in Street Fighter, but it's much worse in League of Legends.
I disagree. I think the team element maybe magnifies the effect because there's more variables. Definitely. I mean,
There's
if
way
you,
more variables.
If you added, 4v4 Street Fighter, you'd have the same argument.
Yeah, I would. But I don't
Yeah,
play
that's
Street
just
Fighter.
not the case. I guess you just don't like team games,
That's not true.
team video games. Name one you play or like.
Yeah, I guess that's maybe you have a point there.
Yeah. So,
But I mean, like,
anyways, I think LoL obviously has done very well as a competitive video game. It is the highest grossing
'cause it's
professional
free.
video game. That's definitely helped their image, and they've done it in a way where it's not pay to win.
mean, like,
particularly.
there's a lot. I mean, there's like real things in League of Legends that show that it's not a skill game. Like the fact that they take the way creeping is involved is just less skilled.
Less skilled than
Yes,
Dota, but
yes.
it's still skill based.
Okay.
And because of
sure,
that
but
fact, you
why
know
would
that
you
they're gonna
take
want
that
the money.
out?
You
Why
can
would you
use
take that out? It gives an advantage.
Well, I don't like Dota nearly as much. Have you seen Dota 2?
Well, I have never played Dota 2.
It's much more complicated, and
I've never played Dota 2. I played a fair bit of Dota.
yeah, well,
But
a fair bit. We played a couple weeks.
taking creeping out.
I mean,
just
it's still
makes it less
creeping. It's
skilled.
just you don't have the option of killing
Yeah.
another person's creeps
taking,
or
like-
tower or
It's taking
your own
like
tower.
a base mechanic out of the game. It's just, I mean, StarCraft 2 is guilty of this as well. They, dumbed down the game a bit to make it easier to play. Like Brood War is much, much harder to play.
You don't see creeping. I don't think you ever creep nearly as well. Last hitting? The idea
talking-
in creeping
No, well-
is to not hit it at all unless you kill it in one blow.
Well, have you ever? I mean, I don't play League of Legends, so I'm not
Exactly. So
claiming I'm a
you-
good creeper. But the fact you cannot deny the fact that the
It's
skill involved
less
in creeping
hard.
in Dota is more involved than it is.
I mean, these
in
are
League of Legends.
two very similar games, and they have their own attributes. Yes, you're right. That is true. I mean, I think LoL is more focused on team fights, while Dota is more focused on long-term, skill over time individually than LoL is. I think LoL's more about working together with other characters better. I mean, obviously, the Baron buff centralizes you to have team fights. The same thing with the creeping, because you can't deny people towers or kill enemy creeps. You're forced into more team confrontations. I think that's their idea.
Yeah.
And I agree with it. I like it. That's what people want to watch, is teams clashing together. They don't want to see people skirting around each other, trying to just gain this edge to the point where they know they won't lose a team fight and then engage. That's not fun. You want to see a contest.
I mean, I'm just not interested in League of Legends. I mean, that's all I can say. I mean,
yeah, but that shouldn't influence your argument on how much skill it takes.
Yeah,
I'm not
at the
interested
pro,
in
it's
StarCraft,
the
but I
same
can
thing.
still
It's
argue
the same thing
with it.
at the pro level. Yeah, at the pro level, it's not any easier to be a professional League of Legends player than it is to be, a Counter-Strike or a StarCraft player.
I'm just saying it's just as hard as anything else. I think it's harder because of the team variable. I think, well, harder, nah, maybe not, but just as. I think it's just
I mean,
as
to
tough
me,
mechanically. I definitely know the difference.
There's
because
less things
have
that
you
you're...
played Nick Halter
like,
at all?
No, so here's why it's not a zero-sum game is my problem, which StarCraft is not a zero-sum game either. And I guess Counter-Strike is not, but it's... Maybe I'm not finding the right way to describe it. In Counter-Strike, your control on the variables, everybody has the same control on the variables. Same thing, StarCraft, there's probably less control because there's different races and units and combinations and stuff like that. In League of Legends, the control on the variables is very, very loose.
I
That's
think it's
why I don't
less
like it.
than the StarCraft thing. I mean, you can pick the same champions.
What?
You can pick the same guys they pick. You have the same options.
I don't see how that's relevant.
Because you're able... It doesn't matter that you can pick different champions than someone else. That doesn't make it any less of a zero-sum game. You're still
No, it's
influencing
definitely not a
each other.
zero-sum game. That's like
guaranteed because like your ability to like improve your characters is not a direct loss to your opponents. Where like Counter-Strike
okay.
would be because like your ability, it is because you have to kill your opponents to win the game, and there's no other way to gain an advantage in Counter-Strike. In StarCraft, it's not the same thing because you can gain advantages without your opponent losing any advantages. Like in a zero-sum game, like.
Well, they did. I mean, it depends on how you hash it. If you're going to take another base, they have lost a resource, a potential one.
Well, it's like in chess. The only way to win is them losing. Does that make sense? Like you have to take a piece for you to like.
That's
get
true
an
about any
advantage. No,
contest.
to get
In
an
order for you to
advantage,
win,
take
they
a
have to
piece.
lose.
To get an advantage, you have to take a piece. Chess is a zero-sum game.
Well, LoL works like that. In order to gain an advantage.
No, LoL is not a zero-sum game. No, it's
In order
not.
to gain advantage over the enemy
It's
team,
creeping.
you have to take their territory. You have to take their stuff. You have to kill their towers.
Yeah, in the
Those
long
are
run.
from them.
Yeah, but it's not a zero-sum game at all. I mean, not at all, but like
Elaborate on that.
like you getting the Baron buff is not them losing anything. You just gained an advantage.
They lost the ability to get the Baron buff.
That's not the same thing, though. You're not
They lost
taking
the
anything
money.
from them. You're gaining an advantage, but they're not losing anything. So they're at like a certain state, and they don't change at all when you get a Baron buff.
I mean, that's the same as like locking. Like you can make the same comparison for securing a bomb site in Counter-Strike. That you have gained this, but they didn't lose anything besides the access to that site.
No, they are losing something because if they don't deactivate the bomb, they're going to lose the game.
No. If you just take it, like let's say you're CT. If you're camping a bomb site, you've taken that bomb site. The terrorists haven't lost anything.
No, they haven't. I mean, yeah, Counter-Strike is not a clear zero-sum game like chess or
Well,
Go
none of
is.
these are. None of these examples are. So why bring it
but
up?
because in zero-sum games, I think zero-sum games, total knowledge games, are the most they're the games that appeal to me the most.
Okay, but we weren't talking about
Because the variables are controlled and everybody knows the variables. So it's like in chess.
Yeah, but you were advocating for StarCraft, which you admit isn't one of these. So why bring it up?
StarCraft is much more similar to this than it is to League of Legends.
So we're now talking about degrees of being a zero-sum game while not still being a zero-sum game.
I don't see
You're
how
talking about
I don't
like
see how
it
that's a
being
criticism.
closer to a zero-sum.
I'm not saying
game.
a zero-sum game is necessarily the greatest game of all time. What I'm trying to talk about here is like being able to control the variables and have knowledge of the variables makes it so that the most skilled player wins out. If the variables are not controlled or known, then the most skilled players are not going to win every time or most often because there's too many variables going on that are uncontrolled, unknown, and it creates for a chaotic, uninteresting game in my opinion. There are less controlled variables in StarCraft than there are in Counter-Strike, I would admit, to be sure. But there's far less controlled and understood variables going on in League of Legends.
Yeah, I don't know that to be true. I mean, the character abilities are there for anyone to read. The items is the same.
I mean,
thing.
you could do like a
What's
simple, like
uncontrolled
you could
about
you
that?
could do a
It's not
simple,
random.
you could do like a simple, calculation to determine like the
Variables within a
the
game?
different combinations that are possible within one single game. They're probably astronomical compared to. I mean, at any one given state, not like in chess where like the root, the trees of moves go on to infinity. But at any one state in the game, the variables are, basically, unknown. They are unknown.
See, I like having more variables. To me, that is.
I mean, it's like
More realistic.
no, it's not. It's like playing basketball, and there's like secret landmines.
Well, to me, it's different than basketball. I would say that's a set thing going on. But if you were to like declare warfare on another nation or whatever, you're gonna have infinite variables. And I think I like imagining these games to be more like that, where you can do anything out of the box. For example, Alexander the Great got surrounded, and he built a wall, so he ended up taking the advantage. You know what I mean? So.
You talking about Caesar? You mean?
Oh, you're right. That was Caesar, not Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great was a good general too, but
Yeah, he never lost a war.
yeah, I was watching the Dan Carlin or listening.
Oh
to
yes,
the Dan Carlin.
yes.
Yeah.
Which one were you listening to?
The first two Mongolian ones.
Oh, dude, you got to go to. Screw them. Fuck the Mongolians.
I like it.
No,
It's
it's it's great. You
I'm
need.
doing it in order. Yeah.
Well, there's no order. They're in they're like series.
Yeah, but it's in order of when it was released.
You got to do the World War One.
Yeah, no, I'll get to
It's
that.
so good. You
Yeah.
have to do it. Like the Mongolians, like I just have a tough time relating. I'm like, yeah, this is crazy. You know, they killed like 1 million people in a town. You know, there's a giant
Kill
mountain.
everyone?
Yeah, there's a giant mountain of bones, and
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
crazy horse people. And it's like, yeah, it's kind of cool. But like World War One, it's like I can, I have some knowledge of it. I can relate to it. The stories are more real because there's firsthand accounts and stuff like that. It's more interesting.
Sure. Yeah, okay, I get that. But that's part of the fun of the Mongolian one.
Yeah.
Genghis Khan. It's that infamy that he has that no one knows very much about him. So he has this mythology around
Yeah,
him.
nobody
I mean,
knows what he looks
no
like.
one can dispute the effect he's had on the world. But it's just interesting to have these stories told about him, and he has these like this dichotomy about how they talk about him too. Like some people talk about him as if he was an honorable guy, and other people talk about him as he's just this bloodthirsty barbarian.
Yeah.
It's just I don't know. I find it interesting. It's good.
Yeah, Dan Carlin is great. Lives in Eugene.
Oh really?
Yep.
Oh, you should have coffee with him.
Yeah, I don't think he would.
No, we can get him on the podcast.
Yeah. Hey, Dan.
Yeah.
You can come fucking talk about video games with us.
We're not. Oh yeah. We
He goes on the Joe Rogan podcast. He's been on there like 3 times, I think.
Yeah, that's how I know of him.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Hey, he has a lot of podcasters on there. I mean, it makes sense. They probably
I don't know where I heard of
support
him.
each other, you know?
He has other podcasters on? Like, I know he's had, like, Adam Carolla.
Yeah, he's had a bunch. Yeah, Adam Carolla was one. And a bunch of people start podcasts afterwards because he always tells them.
He's like, you should start a podcast, man. Yeah, like, I think
Yeah.
Cameron Haynes has one now. Or no,
Yeah.
Steve Rinella does now. It's called, like, the Meteor Podcast.
Yeah, that's all. I was thinking Steve Rinella might have one.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, okay. All right, I think that'll be good for tonight. What do you think?
Was it, like, half an hour?
41 minutes.
Sure.
Yeah, all right, let's wrap it up. And we'll see you later, guys.
See you tomorrow night.